Continuing debate, the honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to say Happy New Year to all my colleagues here and to you, Mr. Speaker, and just say how great it is to physically be back here in the House with everybody. Last November's throne speech brought us a standard empty words with no real plan to solve any of the numerous problems Canadians are facing today. Home affordability, inflation, rising home heating costs, a supply chain disaster, and a labour shortage crisis that we see in this country. Everyday Canadians who don't have access to a trust fund like this Prime Minister are hurting the most. And this government would paint a happy picture and say, nothing to see here, all is good. The people of Calgary Forest Lawn are some of the hardest hit by this out-of-touch Prime Minister's failing policies. He is out there virtue signaling, dividing Canadians, while my constituents live paycheck to paycheck. Some of them are worried about where their next meal comes from, or how they will pay rent, let alone an even more expensive carbon tax. I really shouldn't be shocked. This is the same Prime Minister that doesn't think about monetary policy, or how his massive money printing operation will affect Canadians. It's just inflation. Instead of focusing on growing the economy, empowering entrepreneurs, and attracting investors, the Prime Minister sells Canadian companies to China without any national security review. He ignores the untapped potential of Alberta's oil and gas sector, and instead he imports oil from countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. While he might be making the Green left happy with his leave-it-in-the-ground mentality, Canadians suffer the most with his ridiculous policies. Our energy industry's environmental, social, and governance standards are the highest in the world, and supporting this sector creates good-paying Canadian jobs. This mismanagement doesn't just stop with the economy. We have seen this government's failure to stand up for Canadian interests abroad. The Prime Minister and his cabinet would rather get close with the Communist Party of China than the people in Hong Kong standing up for democracy and freedom. Our global commitment to our allies is weak at best. In Ukraine, the Canadian government would rather give a loan and some non-lethal equipment than the defensive weapons that they need. Other NATO countries, like the US and the UK, are supplying Ukraine with weapons, and European countries have committed ships and fighter jets to the defense of our ally. After what we saw in Afghanistan, we cannot be surprised that this government would rather deliver flowery statements than roll up its sleeves and get to work to defend our friends. And much like what happened in Afghanistan, this is a pure failure on this government's part. Mr. Speaker, around 10,000 Afghan interpreters and their families remain stranded. Those people who served the Canadian government and alongside our brave Canadian forces are now forgotten by this Liberal government. They are hunted by Taliban fighters looking for retribution while this government stands by idly. This Prime Minister pats himself on the back for a job well failed while saying it's too hard to help the people on the ground. My office has received dozens and dozens of emails from Afghan refugees stuck in Afghanistan. They have applied for the special immigration programs, but still, IRCC has ignored them. The government only sends auto replies or leaves people on red. The stories these refugees are sharing with my office are heartbreaking. Families having their homes taken by the Taliban, parents and siblings shot, and children being left to starve. The humanitarian situation is so bad that parents are now selling their children and organs to try and earn money to feed starving family members. Mr. Speaker, of the 40,000 promised Afghan refugees, there have been about 7,000 who have made it to Canada. Only 4,300 of those 7,000 were refugees who applied under the special immigration program for people who assisted the Government of Canada. Instead of working with veterans and NGOs to get the most vulnerable out of Afghanistan, or even the private sponsors willing to assist in resettling refugees in Canada, IRCC has shut everyone out. To say the situation in Afghanistan is dire would be an understatement. Yet IRCC, Global Affairs, National Defense, and the Prime Minister continue to be uncoordinated. There is no plan, and there seems to be no hope for our allies left behind in Afghanistan. Mr. Speaker, a lack of a plan seems to be standard with this Liberal government. At IRCC, things are worse as thousands of immigrants remain stuck in the government's massive backlogs. These Liberals say they will continue increasing immigration levels while also reducing wait times. Yet IRCC has not released a proper plan. As of December, over 1.8 million immigration applications were stuck in this Liberal-made backlog, and it's growing. So many newcomers are stuck, waiting months or years for applications to be processed. These are families that remain separated, businesses that are looking to fill spots. This is hurting our economy and hurting families. We have several ongoing cases in my office that haven't moved since even before the pandemic. Earlier this month, I wrote a letter to the Minister of Immigration asking him to finally deliver a plan to clear this Liberal-made backlog. I have not heard a response, and 1.8 million people are still waiting for theirs. Newcomers to Canada deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. That honestly starts by developing a reliable, transparent, and effective immigration system. Our country cannot afford to shut out hardworking immigrants, entrepreneurs, and investors looking to come to Canada to live the Canadian dream. Temporary foreign workers and Canadian employers cannot wait years to get LMIAs processed and their applications approved. Our economy cannot handle the growing labor shortage crisis. The economic impact of this historic and increasing backlog costs billions to our economy and costs Canadian businesses their future. It seems these Liberals are focused on immigration for political gain instead of helping people looking to come to Canada. As it stands now, children, spouses, and grandparents are left separated from their loved ones. Parents miss the birth of their child, their first steps, and even graduations. Families cannot say goodbye to their loved ones or attend funerals, all due to this Liberal-made backlog in immigration. No one should be punished with family separation in this country simply because they want to start a new life here. The Liberals' mismanagement of the immigration system is absolutely unacceptable. Now is the time to have a real concrete plan. The clock is ticking, and immigrants and Canadians deserve to know how long it will take to clear this historic backlog. Now is not the time for more empty promises and flashy announcements that lead nowhere. So many people are waiting for answers, hoping to call Canada home. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are tired of the division and arrogance showed by this government. So, as we begin a new session of Parliament, let us address the concerns of everyday Canadians. This government must clear the backlogs at IRCC and get our allies in Afghanistan out of harm's way. We must stand up to the regimes in China, Russia, and Afghanistan. We must show the world that Canada still has the guts to be peacekeepers, defenders of democracy, and advocates for freedom. At home, this Liberal Prime Minister must reduce inflation and improve Canada's cost of living. And as an Albertan, I will never stop fighting for Canada's energy industry, even when Ottawa gives in to special interests and foreign influences. My colleagues and I in the Conservative caucus will continue to give a voice to all Canadians, especially those left behind by this Liberal government. Canada is a crossroads, and choosing the status quo is a recipe for disaster. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question et commentaire. Questions and comments. The honourable member for, I almost had it there. Courtney Alberni.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for his speech. Mr. Speaker, I do have concerns right now. In the speech from the throne, it says the government is continuing to work on reform of policing in Canada, yet we haven't seen any action. In fact, right now, we're hearing from land defenders, from Indigenous communities that see a double standard happening in Canada. We've got right now a protest that's keeping Ottawa under siege. Seniors, people living with disabilities can't access medicine or food. In Alberta, and in the member's home province, Mr. Speaker, right now, those same types of protesters are keeping that border, not just an artery, but the border under siege. Goods and services are actually starting to get destroyed by waiting. Workers can't get access to medicine and food. Does my colleague not agree that there's a double standard? And what does he propose to unlock the seizure? And does he think that this is acceptable behavior?
Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Thank you, my honourable colleague, for the question. In regards to the Coots border, and that's what I think my honourable colleague is talking about, I think the Premier of Alberta had made it very clear that he's asked for that to be cleared up. But I really want to talk about what the underlying messaging of what these hardworking truckers is, and they just want to be heard. My colleague from the other side had said that everyone needs to be listened to, yet this Prime Minister and this Liberal caucus refuses to listen to the real concerns of hardworking, everyday Canadians. There's more division in this country than we've ever seen before, caused by this Prime Minister name-calling, pitting one region against another, one industry against another, and one group against another. Real leadership unites people. It brings people together, even though we all have differing ideas and ideologies. Leadership, true leadership, brings people together.
A commentaire, the honourable member for Barrie-Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for his speech today. We started last night on the Afghanistan Committee really digging deep into the situation in Afghanistan. We're hearing horrific stories, desperation, despair, an economy that's collapsing, and there was lack of preparation on the part of the Canadian government to really be prepared for that crisis developing. Based on what we're hearing so far and what he's heard from his constituents, how much did the Canadian government let not just the people of Afghanistan down, but Canadians who are in Afghanistan?
Well, member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
I want to thank my honourable colleague from Barrie-Innisfil for the question and his great advocacy for the people in Afghanistan. Look, the failure in Afghanistan started well before this Prime Minister called a very selfish election, abandoning those that served Canada and putting $650 million more debt onto Canadians. This started way back, way before that, because there was refugees of Hazara, Sikh, and Hindu faith that were stuck in Afghanistan for many, many years. I personally was honored to sponsor a family from there in 2015. And what I saw through my own experience was it took this Liberal government 4 years to bring over a persecuted family, a family that was afraid that their daughter would be kidnapped, forcefully married, raped, while she was just going to school every single day. And it took this government, who knew that, 4 years to get that family here. So this epic failure in Afghanistan is a trend by this Liberal government. They need to step up and take the recommendation seriously and defend and stand up for those that stood up for Canada in their time of need.
Question et commentaire, l'honorable député de Beauport-Limoilou.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie mon collègue pour son discours. Et en effet, la situation en Afghanistan et les appels à l'aide sont nombreux. La situation est alarmante. Il y a une autre situation au niveau de l'immigration qui est moins dangereuse, entendons-nous, mais qui amène aussi des difficultés économiques au Québec et dans chacune des provinces, dans ma circonscription également. C'est les étudiants étrangers, particulièrement les francophones, qui se font refuser systématiquement leurs demandes. Alors, j'aimerais entendre mon collègue sur cette situation-là et sur les améliorations qu'on devrait apporter au système d'immigration.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
I really appreciate the question from my honourable colleague from Quebec, and maybe just to inform her that this is a study that we're currently doing inside of the Immigration Committee, inside of SIM. It's very alarming, this report that came out of this systemic racism that's been being taking place within IRCC. It's not only discriminating its own employees, but much like what my honourable colleague was talking about, for those people from Africa, there's reports of them being called the Dirty 30. That's what Africa is being referred to. This is very concerning. I had questioned this immigration minister about that when I was first time I could in the last session. He was patting himself on the back again for a job well failed. There is no action plan to address racism. And I'll say it again. What can we expect from that Minister of Immigration to address racism when he couldn't even stand up to the Prime Minister's racist blackface? So until we can see that addressed, I don't think that we can put very much confidence that this Liberal government is serious about addressing racism in IRCC.
Continuing debate, the honourable member for Saskatoon West.